First of all, I don't like the term failure. I like the term falling. I think you need, we fail fast. Well, the problem with the word fail is it's like the word cancer, right? If you have stage 4 lung cancer or stage 4 liver cancer, and you have a mild melanoma with a 99.999% chance of you'll be fine, both of those things are called cancer. And the problem is they're not the same thing. And failure is the same, which is failure could be absolutely catastrophic or it could be a minor hiccup, but the problem is we call it failure. So I think we need to use different terms, right? Failure, I believe, is something we want to avoid. But falling is something that happens naturally. And we want to fall and get up more often. That's what I think is fall fast and get yourself back up, as opposed to lying on the ground and complaining, right? So I want to embrace falling, because that's taking risks, that's trying. You only fall when you push the boundaries, right? But the language matters because it changes our mindset, especially because it's too broad a definition for failure. So one of the ways we embrace falling is by when somebody does fall, we don't say, "What have you done?" We go, "Okay, try again," as leaders, right? How can I help you fix it? And we're just a little more relaxed about it. And we don't swoop in and do it for them, right? But rather we go, so in other words, we're encouraging risk-taking. We're encouraging people to try, recognizing that they won't lose their jobs, that especially if you're more junior, you really couldn't do anything that brings down the firm anyway. And we have to give people the opportunity to fall and let them either learn to fix their own problems or guide them so that they can. Every single one of us has screwed up a bazillion times, and the only reason we are where we are today is because somebody said, all right, you're an idiot, but try again, you know? Like, that's where, I know who did it for me, Peter Intomaggio, my old boss, years and years and years ago. The guy would never answer any of my questions. Peter, what should I do? What do you think we should do? I'm like, oh. If I knew, I wouldn't be asking, well, what do you think? I think we should do this, then do that. The guy never answered a question, and if I screwed up, he goes, whew, what are you gonna do? But I never felt fear that I would get fired, ever. I never felt afraid that my job was on the line when I screwed up. We have to do that for people. For sure. And all the stuff you talk about, challenging and pushing boundaries, means if you're pushing boundaries and you're thinking big, you're gonna fall a lot. It happens. There's no such thing as innovation without experimentation, and experimentation inherently requires failure. And I think a lot of companies that are too finite-minded, they fear failure. They fear, well, let me restate. I actually don't like the word failure. I like the word falling. Failure we should work very hard to avoid. But falling, we should encourage because you can get back up. I know of one large gaming company, and I love this, that they don't have parties when they hit their goals. They have parties when they fail. They have parties when a game is a complete blowout, because they're trying to acculturize being comfortable with missing a goal or complete abject failure. And they have a party, and they have their own champagne, which it has a label on it. Their own label, I think it's called, they're called lessons. And on the back of the champagne bottle after the party, they actually write the lessons they learned from the failure. And so it's a company that's very comfortable with failing, which means they try again very easily, and they're super innovative. So creating a culture where falling is part of the game, I think is wonderful. It has to be celebrated. I love it.
I had to learn how to hold space for someone, and then practice. That's awareness. And I think our health is awareness. Unfortunately, some people wait for the breakup to learn that they're bad listeners. Some people wait for the heart attack to realize they're eating poorly. You know, that's awareness. You get awareness by getting a punch in the face. And I think it's a responsibility for every human being, should they want to have value in the lives of others, to seek awareness in how they show up in the world and how the world impacts them. Their mental health, their physical health, their ability to maintain relationships and nurse relationships. And you hear me, you hear me say this over again. It's a repeating pattern, which is for those who want to show up better in the lives of others, which is I see being healthy as a service to others. I see being a better listener being a service. I see everything in terms of service to others. There are benefits to you as well, of course. But I think we've neglected for decades the socialness of our animal. And
we don't always have to be right. We don't always have to be in charge. We don't always have to be the one who succeeds. It's not about winning or losing. And that's where I go to the second point. After empathy comes perspective, where it's not about winning or losing. In game theory, there are two kinds of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games. And this is how you're going to change your perspective, right? A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective. Baseball, for example. We know the rules, we all agree to the rules, and whoever has more runs at the end of 9 innings is the winner, and the game is over. No one ever says, if we can just play 2 more innings, I know we can come back. Doesn't work that way. The game is over, right? That's a finite game. Then you have an infinite game. Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. When you pit a finite player versus a finite player, the system is stable. Baseball is stable, right? When you pit an infinite player versus an infinite player, the system is also stable, like the Cold War, for example, because there cannot be a winner and a loser. There are no winners and losers in an infinite game, right? It doesn't exist. And because there are no winners or losers, what ends up happening in the infinite contest is players drop out when they run out of the will or the resources to play. But there's no winners or losers. Problems arise when you pit a finite player versus an infinite player, because a finite player is playing to win, and an infinite player is playing to keep the game going. Now let's look at business. The game of business has pre-existed or has existed long before every single company that exists on this planet today. And it will outlast every single company that exists on this planet today. There's no winning the game of business. And the reason is because we haven't agreed to the rules. I get such a kick out of this. You realize how many companies actually don't know the game they're in, right? Listen to the language that the companies use. We're trying to beat our competition. We're trying to be number 1. Did you know that we were ranked number 1? Look at the listing. Based on what criteria? Revenues, profits, market share, square footage, number of employees, based on what time frame? A quarter, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years? I haven't agreed to those standards. How can you declare yourself the winner? How can you declare yourself number 1 where no one else in the game has agreed to the rules? It's arbitrary. There is no winning because there's no end. In other words, companies are playing finite games. Listen to their language. They're trying to beat their competition. What does that even mean? It's the leaders and the companies that understand the game that they're in and organize their resources and their decision-making around the infinite contest that outlast and frustrate their competition.